Welcome to Chapter 3 of Falling for Truth, A Spiritual Death and Awakening, Magical Commitment, the Doorway to Energy. Once a person steps on the path that is no path, they will always be tempted, always challenged. Unless you have an unshakable commitment to this work, you will get sidetracked by everything that comes along, and there are lots of pretty illusions out there. The path to truth is very simple. You make a commitment for truth, and then whenever you come to a crossroads where you have to choose between the truth and something else, you choose your commitment to truth. That's all. Richard Rose. It is Sunday around noon, and I am arriving in a car with 3 other white folks from Calgary to an Indian reserve in western Alberta. Every Sunday for the past 4 months, I have attended sweat lodges given by Bruce, a local medicine man. He is one who is comfortable with whites joining. When we arrive, Bruce is standing outside. There is no fire burning, which should have been lit 2 hours ago to have the rocks ready. "Hey, there's no sweat today," he says. "I have to take down and cleanse the lodge." The Calgary group, many who have been coming for about a year, are visibly upset. "What do you mean there's no sweat today?" one of the women asked Bruce. "All of us have come out here, given up our Sunday. We come for the healing. Just clean it tomorrow. We're here. We're ready. One more day won't matter." Another car drives up, and 2 more whites come out to join the conversation. Most Sundays have about 16 people at the sweat, half native, half white. It was a beautiful early September day, and like everyone else, I was looking forward to the feeling of cleansing and clarity that one feels after coming out of a sweat lodge. I simply stood by, quietly watching the scene unfold. "Hey, sometimes the sweat needs to be cleaned, you know," Bruce responded. The conversation ends. My white friends decide to go for a walk along a nearby lake instead and enjoy the nice weather. "Are you coming?" they call out to me. I ask Bruce if he needs help. He nods. "No, it's okay," I reply. "I will stay here." With that, they got in their cars and drove away. While both Advaita and Zen focus on what can be called non-duality, they see it in different ways. Pure Zen wants complete commitment and practice on answering one's koan, the deep life question. This will exhaust the seeker, which can create a mini-death and allow the Absolute to reveal itself. Pure Advaita has less a focus on personal doing, but it is more aimed at trying to back away from the small self and dying to all objects of creation until one is only in the big self. The native Indian teachings are about living in harmony and balance with one's surroundings. Yet those who get the call to be a shaman are the ones who have learned how to cross death and return to be of service. All 3 have death as their central doorway to knowing, and as such, all 3 pathways are related. Yet these ancient traditions are not what is sold in the spiritual marketplace. New Zen, New Advaita, and New Age shamanism are not really about the ancient practice of self-knowing. New shamanism wants us to feel good. New Zen wants us to be peaceful. New Advaita to imagine we are perfect. In each, no commitment is needed. Instead, they claim we are already enlightened, we just don't remember it. Yet as John Kent wrote, that is like saying we are all rich millionaires, we just don't have the money, and we forgot where we buried it. While it is claimed that the final realization is a complete giving up, a total surrender, one cannot give up as an action. Thinking you can surrender, or that you can be detached as an act that you can do or not do, is not really surrender or detachment. Both happen when there is no other choice but to surrender. As Rose claimed, while enlightenment is an accident, we still have to find ways to perform committed action to make ourselves accident-prone. Tremendous effort is needed due to the forces trying to keep everything unchanged. While practice is one half of the spiritual path, it must simultaneously be done while seeing the fallacy in our actions. It is very paradoxical that one must work like hell to find that there was nothing to work hard about. Many of the current spiritual teachers now claim that since all of our breakthroughs and advancement will come only from grace, which is true, it is our very effort that is the problem. As a result, we should just stop everything. This is a misleading teaching. To start with, it is not our seeking as such that is the problem, just that we are seeking in the wrong direction. Rather than looking for answers, people seek to find ways to get egoic needs met. This includes acquiring toys, happiness, or importance in the dream world. Thus, such seeking never leads to realizing one's nature. When grace comes, most people try to run away from it. They don't expect it to be so merciless, so relentless, so overwhelming. Grace gives you nothing and takes away everything. Karl Renz. Secondly, the word grace must be addressed. To use this word makes the descent of the Spirit on us sound pleasant. It also makes it sound like we have to be some specially chosen individual for it to happen. While this is true at the core, the problem comes from telling students to just give up trying and wait for grace. There is a specific moment for that, but it must be executed at the right time. Do that too early, and it will just be an egoic strategy designed to remain lazy. It is why I prefer Castaneda's term, descent of the Spirit, a very ambiguous phrase to describe when a doorway shows itself. His description, in The Power of Silence, shows that the experience is not something we are wishing for or acting on. It just happens, exploding on us without warning. When it does, we must take immediate action to not miss the doorway placed before us. Even in surrender, there is still a doorway that requires a choice: enter or ignore it. Action and surrender constantly interact in a cosmic dance of spiritual seeking. Real practice takes us to surrender, while real surrender eventually takes us to practice. The one teaching that I wish I knew at the age of 16 was how to become a master of commitments, no matter what the commitment is. To say we will do anything becomes a promise to ourselves to carry it out. Making a commitment and sticking to it is in fact equivalent to powerful magic. Why? It's simple, really. We don't take the time to truly look at what we say yes or no to, often saying yes to everything and everyone, usually to avoid feeling guilty for telling someone no. As a result, we overbook ourselves and stay constantly drained of power. Rose suggests that by following a path of commitments, it undercuts this very dynamic. For example, if someone asks us to come to the party, we can no longer say our usual, "Sure, I will come," even though we know we have no intention of going. To say you will do anything is a commitment. Therefore, we must start choosing what we say yes to very carefully. That is because once we say that we will do it, we have to do it. If not, we will lose the magic such a path provides. Captain Ahab in Moby Dick had that sort of commitment when he responded, "Swerve me? Ye cannot swerve me, else ye swerve yourselves. The path to my fixed purpose is laid with iron rails, whereon my soul is grooved to run." The ego will test any commitment, especially if we start to walk a real spiritual path. It will do this to see just how sincere we are. Since egoic layers are made up of nothing but fear, the deeper we go, the more fear gets thrown back at us. Or in another scenario, it may offer us something we've always hoped for, like when a game show offers $50,000 if the contestant will quit and not go for the $1 million prize. Any possible trap can be used, and it will stun you how many traps and fears we have. Commitment says you don't care what the dream throws at you. Instead, you're going to go through every one of them and do what you promised yourself you would do. When Richard Rose first began to teach, he had a group that met every Friday night. Lo and behold, each Friday, either his wife or his kids got sick, forcing him to cancel. Finally, he told them that he didn't care if they were dying on the floor of gunshot wounds. Every Friday he was going to go out and do his teaching. Guess what? The illness is stopped. In a sense, the universe tested his commitment. Since his commitment was firm, the blocks ended. Do not think that the path will be smooth and easy just because we have commitment. Some tests and trauma must come to us, or else there will be no dismantling of the ego. Commitment only reduces certain tests. One extra piece Rose feels as part of commitment is to make a vow that while currently helpless, if you do find answers, you will take time to share what you found with others. You will become a helper. It is like your willingness to be a helper later draws a magnet of those forces, beings, and people who wish to offer help right now. The problem is that one is not likely to have the drive to complete our biggest commitments right away, so we have to start small. For example, a simple thing, such as the commitment to do stretching every morning for 4 days, or walk to work for 1 week, then do it. It seems simple, but to finish one small task we committed ourselves to proves we can complete what we set out to do, and gives us energy and self-confidence to tackle bigger things, eventually tackling our biggest commitment, to know ourselves. Bruce, his son, and I walk over to the sweat lodge. These people, they come just to get. They think like white people. What can I get for free from these Indians? You don't just come to a sweat when you feel sick asking for help. You come when you feel good, so that you can help others. You have to give to get. This sweat right now is full of all of their old sorrows, fears, and illness. It must get cleaned so none of it can come back and hurt them anymore. I did this today for a reason, so each person could clean away their own pains. But I guess they really like their pain. So you see, it's good that you stayed. With that, we began to take down the sweat lodge. As we do, Bruce, for the first time, begins to inform me on the spiritual nature. What the door means, why it is a certain height, why it faces a particular direction, what the ties mean, what the wood means. I learned more in those 4 hours than I learned in the previous 4 months. In short, I had made a commitment that day to be at Bruce's sweat and make myself available in whatever capacity to help. Fire starter, rock carrier, water gatherer, simple participant. Just because there was no sweat itself did not mean I was not there to help. Keeping that commitment that day opened a door to learning about the door of the sweat lodge. I should point out that just because someone has a sweat lodge does not mean they know how to use it. It takes years of training in the old ways to be gifted by the spirits to have the responsibility of leading sweats. I say this as there are many white people, particularly in Europe, claiming to have been trained by some native Indian medicine man and are now running sweats. They usually do so for a fee. Bruce has never asked for 1 cent for coming, but has appreciated all gifts given to him, usually quickly given away to someone else. If you are trying to take a vacation from your nature in order to find your essence, the forces of adversity will attack you in any way they can. And that usually means finding the weakest link. It can be your wife, kids, job, importance, anything you might be attached to. If you let these adverse forces slow you down, you're just going to encourage them. To have a chance at really doing something, you have to set your psychic shield in place. That is a state of pure commitment. No exceptions. That way you are protected, because nothing can be thrown at you that will sway you. And even though they may not know it, so is your family protected. Richard Rose. Once you examine the matrix reality we call the world, it becomes clear that this place is not set up for anyone to leave. Instead, it is set up like a giant perpetual wheel to keep everyone running for the carrot dangling before our eyes, where our efforts only keep the great wheel spinning. If one wants off the wheel, each sleeper must make a mad dash for freedom. Few make it, most never try. Seeing all colors of meaning bleached from life, all gods exposed to be humbugs, and then looking inside and seeing one's presumed identity, devoid of substance, leaves one empty and aching, with the resolute desire for an answer being all that remains, echoing within the heart. One's prayers disappear into the void. John Kent. The Gnostics used much of the Nag Hammadi text to discover this world, to discuss this world, being an artificial simulation they called Hal, influenced by shadow-like figures they called archons. While these beings implant into humans a parasitic mind, which John Last has translated as the virus. To recognize this and counteract it was one of the main steps to rise from the chains in Plato's cave. I will discuss this parasite more in the upcoming chapters, and present a vision directly related to this discussion. For now, part of commitment is aimed at one hand to not ignore the way the game is set up, but at the same time not to focus obsessively on the source of the adversity itself. To angrily dwell on overcoming the forces of adversity head-on is a trap that sidetracks the seeker in a futile waste of energy. Study how the delusional influences may affect our mind and actions. The study of hypnosis reveals important clues about how easily we can be programmed and fooled, and in a sense, how to deprogram and unfool ourselves. This will help us move to a more witnessing vantage point to determine what is my own and what is coming from an external-internal parasite. The search and work is always an internal one, going within one's own psychological condition and correcting the errors found in our own functioning. It is a journey of discovering the false, and the only way it can be discovered is by honestly going to look for it. As you can see, this book will be filled with stories. Here's one. The Korean monk that I spent much time with, Mr. Park to all of us, was in Hawaii when a number of girls flew over from Germany to meet him. While at times being one of the kindest and most compassionate humans I've ever been around, he too was like Yoda in Star Wars, totally unpredictable. When these girls arrived at his house, Mr. Park came out of his room to meet them. The first one extended her hand to say, "Hi, I'm Anna from Germany." Mr. Park immediately recoiled and began screaming at them. "Germans, all of you, Hitler, Germans, evil, you should all be killed." Then he turned and walked back into his room. Needless to say, everyone was rather speechless. Of course, the traveling German girls wanted nothing more to do with this crazy man, so they went downtown to have a coffee and planned the rest of their Hawaiian experience. While at the coffee shop, the same woman introduced herself to someone she met with her similar, "Hi, I'm Anna from Germany." This time, she noticed her shoulders dropped and head bent down as if to say, "I'm from Germany, please don't hate me." Upon noticing this, the women immediately came back to the house and called Mr. Park out of his room, to which she stretched out her hand again, this time keeping her back straight and head up to say, "Hi, I'm Anna from Germany." Mr. Park now shook her hand and said, "Welcome." He saw the victimhood of her false self instantly playing out, and he was not going to pretend or play games, but honestly call it out right there. He was either going to get worked on or not, but no games, no hiding. This is a great thing I can say about this work. The further you go, the more honest you have to become in order not to get swallowed whole by the process. Honesty with everything inside and out, and such events like the one above simply reinforce this dramatically. Instead of suggesting we are divine, Rose claimed that we are beings lost in a maze of mirrors in a madhouse, and he suggests we look at all the ways we fool ourselves from facing the truth of our condition. Honestly examining reality, inner and outer, can be terrifying. Therefore, most people instinctively never risk turning their attention inwards, but would rather remain as puppets on a stage, never questioning who is pulling their strings. Since the ego self does not want to die, that energy is needed to push us to the death experience, to go past the ego and the parasite that is behind it. Castaneda said much of what Don Juan was doing was to make his head bigger so it would feel safe when being destroyed, while Rose reminded that one has to fatten the head before chopping it off. The person who becomes enlightened first has to become the sanest person on earth. Theologenus calls the seeker a perpetual youth, seeing the world and self in an ever-fresh outlook, as a child sees before conditioning takes over. And while someone like Mr. Park or Rose agrees with this, Rose also suggested the need for people to be old as well. For in old age one is getting close to death, and is one of the few times people may see the foolishness of their lives and all the games they wasted their time on. Unfortunately, this comes either just prior to death, or with the person so old they have no energy to do anything about it. Rose said part of his job was to age a few young people, to have their death understanding at an age when someone still has the time and energy available. The preparatory condition for enlightenment is trauma. Indulge in it while you can. You will have enough peace in the cemetery. Richard Rose. Perhaps our suffering is just there to show us the next egoic layer to drop. However, we don't have to go out and try to make our life hard or cause trouble. Life will do it for us if we're serious. Trauma is what happens to us when we turn our attention back on ourselves. To finally spiral within and see all of the old pains usually only happens when someone gets exhausted from their outer search through illness or failure. When one has tried a guru, time in India, vegetarianism, climbing the corporate ladder, having the perfect spouse and kids, but sees none has worked. Only when all of our efforts have failed might we finally decide to look to the only place we have yet to look, where we currently are. John Kent summed up how difficult this path is for those who turn within. John Kent summed up how difficult the path is for those who turn within. The path described is not easy or pretty. It does not promise immediate peace or comfort, social betterment, a loving God, or eventual celestial delights. It promises work at self-understanding, the anxious uncertainty of doubt, the dissolution of the mirage of enjoyment and egotism that we have used to justify continuous living, the tension of existing in conscious ignorance, the challenge of countering adverse forces, the increasing loneliness, the quiet frustration of being stuck between heaven and earth, yet having a home in neither, the pain of an awareness that is yet inadequate to answer itself, and finally, the inescapable appointment with death that mercilessly exposes all of our lies and makes a mockery of our dreams. Unless one's desire is for the unembellished truth, regardless of price, one will have little motivation to continue on this kind of path as long as more attractive side roads are available. To pass through the eye of the needle, one needs to be as light as a feather, as in the test of the Egyptian weighing of the heart. It is why we have to clean out all egos, false beliefs, identifications, and projections. Otherwise, we will stay attached to the illusionary realm. To awaken in a dream world we know nothing about turns dreams into nightmares. And there is no guarantee that we will not wind up trapped in an after-death state that is nothing more than another projection, either a wishful heaven or a scary hell. Both may be another delusion in Maya's giant dream. Perhaps, as Rose says, we living people are the real nuts, for we never realized that we could have been better off staying dead, and not narcissistically having to get another body and get back on the stage and play another game. A great ball of energy is required to get us over each hump that we come across, and that is where our commitment comes in. Yet as we continue through the adversity, we begin to notice another element: help. Just as there seem to be beings and an intelligence there to get in our way, there is another that seems to offer us what we require. Learning how to spot and be open for this help is another part of learning the path to truth. As such, we will have to work very hard, while at the same time being what Gurdjieff called sly. To work hard to awaken, but not disturb the other sleepers, who will lash out at those who try. Spiraling inward takes courage, and one tends to only have real courage when we have nothing to lose. When we see we are boxed in with no way out, can't go back, but can only continue forward. Death is coming. This is a special mood, one that at first looks like defeat, but it is in fact the mood of the warrior. It is from this mood where transformation takes place, where a silence from beyond is also seen to be us. There was within me a stillness of silence, and I heard the blessedness whereby I knew my proper self, the allogenous. Thank you for listening to Chapter 3. The next chapter will be appearing shortly.